For today's tutorial, we're going to be beading using a single needle method. So the way that I'm going to show you today is going to be a little different from most people. If you feel comfortable beading using 2 needles or in your own method, that's totally fine, but today I'm going to show you a new way. I just find this way will be easier to do simple shapes. So to begin, you're going to need beading thread. So I have white nylon beading thread, a piece of paper, so this is just printer paper, a beading needle, mine's a size 12, scissors, a pen to draw your design, the colors that you have. So these are seed beads size 12, and then the material you're going to bead onto. So this is just an extra piece of commercial hide, but of course you can bead onto anything that you have at home. Another popular material type is FlexiFirm or thick felt. So grab all of those things and let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is think about our design. So if you have access to a printer right now, I recommend printing out your design so that way you have clear lines. But for me, I don't have access to a printer, so I'm just going to draw out quickly what I want. So if it's your first time beading, I recommend doing something simple and small, nothing with too many curves or too many lines. And I recommend something smaller than 2 inches by 2 inches. So a small square within that shape. You want to see what you're beading and then make sure that your paper is around that same size. So this is what I'm beading onto. Ideally, I want my beadwork to be somewhere in here, not going off. So I'm going to make sure that I try to keep my design in the center here. So I'm just looking at a reference photo and I'm just going to try. And of course, it doesn't have to be perfect. And just because I'm drawing neat lines does not mean my beadwork is going to be neat lines either. But it is what it is. Something cute like that, you know, something simple. So when you have that ready, we'll move on to the next step. Our next step is attaching our sheet of paper to our material that we're beading. So for mine, I just want to see that I fit it. I'm going to kind of gauge where it will line up, and I want mine relatively in the center. So what I'm going to have to do, if you can see the outline there, is to have a little bit off, but that's really fine. That's why I wanted mine to be bigger. So to start, we're going to thread our needle. So I have a piece of thread here and cut it to about 40 inches in length. You're going to thread your needle by just pushing it through the eye, just like that. We're going to double thread it, and to me that means bringing both of the ends together and tie a knot. So you can tie a knot any which way you want, but for me, I tie my knots by wrapping around my fingers, pulling one of the fingers out. You see the loop. Take the tail, pull it through the loop, and pull. You're going to double knot it for more secure strength. Do it one more time, just like that. You want the knots to land on top of each other, and you'll get better at this as you go along. Cut off the tail because no one needs that. You can see there's a little bit of a tail left, but since our knots are going to be in the back, it doesn't really matter. You can use a lighter to bring that down if you want, but for me, it doesn't really matter. So what you're going to do is just a very basic stitch. I'm going to start at the back. We're just securing the paper to the material, so it doesn't really matter what it looks like. So I came up the back, pulled. I'm going to go over here, push through, pull. Oh, but don't pull too tight because it looks like that. You just want it to be just enough to keep the paper connected to the material you're beading. Pull. Push. And then I'm going to do 1 or 2 more. So this thread is going to get cut off at the end, so don't worry too much about it. One last push through. So it's just holding it on. Tie a knot. So for me, how I tie my knots, especially on a project like this, is I hold it in my fingers like this. So kind of like I'm pinching right here. Wrap it around my finger. There's a giant loop right here. You're gonna pull that through. Now, if I pull like this, the knot's gonna end up here. You wanna stretch this loop to be big enough to be at the end. But you can see, because I pulled it so much, it's bending. We don't want that, so push it all the way down here. Hold and pull. So do one more time. And again, this doesn't really matter too much because it's coming off at the end anyway. And just like that. Cut that off, retie your knot, and we'll get started on the next step. So to begin, we're gonna start by picking a line. So I have my colors laid out here. Let's start with lines. It's kind of the easiest way. So we're gonna start going through the bottom, aiming for the start of one of those lines. Pull all the way out. Now this method I'm going to teach you is a very simple one, and I think it'd be the easiest way to show you online. So what we're going to do first is pick up 4 beads. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just like this. So I like to pull it to the very end. Aim for that line. Follow that line generally. So you can see my lines right there. I'm just lining up like that. Now, I'm going to take my needle where this little row of beads ends. I'm going to push through. So, where it ends, push through. Not going through the beads because the beads are still freely loose. We're going to pull all the way through. But now we have to secure that because it's kind of like a little worm. It wants to go all the way around, especially if you're doing more beads in one go. So we're going to do something called tacking. And tacking is, we have our line here. You want to take your needle and go over and hold it in place. So that way it stays there. So coming up the bottom, coming from one side, you can see that I'm on this side around halfway. So I like to tack every 2 to 3 beads, but for the sake of this one, I'm going to tack every 2. So coming up, I'm going to pull over, and I'm in between the 2 and 2, push down on the other side, just like that. So looking at it this way, we came up from this side, we went over, and we're coming down this side. So pull, just like that. And that's how you do applique beading. So if you were going to use 2 needles to bead, you'll use 1 needle specifically just to add the beads, and it never goes in and out unless you need to. And then you'll have 1 needle to go and do the tacking. But for this one, we'll just stick with this method. And I know some people would prefer to use 2, and that's totally okay. So to continue, to make it look like one continuous line and not just groups of 4, I'm going to come back up near the edge of that row, just like that. You're going to pull, and I choose to just go through this last bead, just so it looks seamless. And of course, whatever you feel comfortable doing, there's a lot of different ways to bead, so I know my method might not work for everyone, and that's okay. Find what works for you. It's part of experimenting. So again, I'm just going to continue picking up 4 beads at a time, just like that, and continue all the way around. So keep following that line. Just like this. Where that line ends, we still gotta tack it So we're going to come up from the bottom. From this side, we're going to pull all the way up. Find the middle of that 4. Come around. So if we come up on this side, we need to go down on this side. So just like that. Can you see that? Push through. Just like that. As you're beading, if you notice that your lines aren't perfect, that's fine. You can actually go through the whole line over again. And I'll straighten it some. But if it's bunching up or it's really curvy, take a look at how you're beading, how hard you're pulling, because that could make it spread out a lot more. Or if you're trying to do a full line and it's turning out squiggly as you're tacking, you may have too many beads. So take some practice. I'm definitely still learning, I know that. So push up from the bottom. Again, we're gonna go through this bead just so it looks seamless. Now I'm gonna pick up 4 more. 4. Make sure to keep following the line. Push down where it ends. Again, we'll have to tack, so come up from the bottom. This time we're coming up from this side. As long as you are going over, doesn't matter what side you start or end on. Push through. Looking okay. I don't mind that. We'll continue. Come up from the bottom. Make sure to push through. So make sure you keep watching for tangles. Don't go any faster than you think you need to go, because when we rush, that's when we usually get more tangles. And then keep looking at the bottom, because if you have big bubbles of thread, that means you have to start adjusting things. And just keep going. Just remind yourself that you are doing the best that you can, and it's your art, and it's going to look beautiful. Whether it's your first, your 10th, or your 1000th piece of art, it's going to be different each time, and the more that you do it, the better you get. So now we reached one of our first rose hips. Now we still have to tack. Come up from one side. So we're coming up on this side. We'll need to bring it over and push it down on the other side. Just like that. Pull. Just like that. So we have one line done. Not bad. So usually when I finish one piece like that, I usually like to tie a knot just in case something goes wrong further down the line and I don't have to undo or risk undoing all of my work. So again, doing my knot, holding in my fingers, wrap it around my hand, pulling it through this loop, holding it where I want it to go, pull and hope for the best. And there we go. So don't cut it off. We don't want to tie more knots than we need. So when you get to that stage, or when you finish your first line, we'll move on to the next. For the next step, I want to focus on this rose hip right here. So this one has curves. So we want to make sure that we take care of those curves the best way we can. So I'm going to start somewhere in the center, because I don't like to start right on the curve. I like to give myself a little bit of wiggle room. So still on the line. This is where I'm coming out of. Pull all the way. And again, the colors that I'm choosing, I've pre-planned ahead of time. So make sure if you don't know what colors are going where, or you don't have an idea, make sure you print out a couple different of your patterns or draw a different color, print out a couple different types of your pattern and color it in just so you can have a feel for what it might look like. So that way when you are beading, you don't have to undo and restart because you don't really like how it looks. So I'm going to pick up again 4. I'm going to do the darker color on the outside. So when I do curves, I use my nail. So our nail has a nice gentle curve. So if I went straight across, it will look like a very boxed rose hip. And that's not what I want. I want a nice gentle curve. So I'm going to curve it around my thumb just like that. And again, same idea. Where it ends, you're going to push through. And don't be afraid of undoing and redoing. So coming up from this side, I'm going to pull all the way through. Push onto the other side. And there's that. So we're just going to continue until we complete the circle. Coming up from the bottom. Push through that bead so it looks seamless. I have my first tangle. That's okay. And a little bit of I still have a little bit of a tangle. What the heck? Okay, so I'm going to retry. Go through that bead, pull. You see how that piece of thread just wants to hang out and I don't want it on top, so I'm going to try pull it. Yeah, not bad. Just wiggle it into place. Pick up 4 more. And we'll continue. So when you get into the groove of it, it becomes nice and relaxing. Come up from this side. As you can tell, I went a little rogue away from my line here, and I kind of like how it looks. So hopefully it doesn't come and bite me in the butt, but rose hips are pretty plump, so like it should be fine. We'll see what happens. I'm one of those people that plans something, and then by the time I'm executing the plan, it probably will change. So that's why I can't really plan presentations, because I just need to know what I need to know so I can present it in a lot of different ways. So if I practice, I feel like that just throws me off. What about you guys? Okay, so now we've seen they're coming up to the tip. The tip of rose hips aren't like a direct straight angle. It's more of a gentle curve. So I'm going to keep that in mind as I approach. I'm going to push through. It's my first time beading rose hips, so we'll see how it turns out. But, you know, I'll be happy anyway because I really like these colors together. So I feel like rose hips are one of those things that not too many people are familiar. They're like, you got that shape wrong. But it's your art. Express yourself any which way. So just keep going. So continue. Just keep doing the same things over and over again. I always find doing the outline first is easiest. Some people prefer starting from the inside and then doing your outline, but it's up to you. Figure out what works best for you. You can see it looks kind of looks a lot like nothing, and that's okay. Little run in my thread. Just, look at it. It's kind of like a little puzzle every time it happens. And just keep going. If it makes you nervous as you're going and you feel like you need to undo and restart, go ahead and do it. But I honestly think it's going to look good no matter what. Well, it's going to look good because it's something that you made and you should be proud of the art that you get to make. And if it looks kind of wobbly, kind of messy, well, you're learning. And even if you beat it for years and years and years, you're still learning. And there's new things that we can learn every day. So we're lifelong learners. That's what my finished rose tip will look like. So if I'm coming up on the end of my circle, I usually like to go through the bead here, just like that, and pull. And then I'm going to push through. Now we still need to tack. So, tack, just like that. Now, I'm going to tie my knot again, just like this. One more time. So that is one part of my beadwork done. So this is my completed outline. It's a little messy, but that's okay. This is the first time that I'm making this shape, and I'm happy with how it came out. So in the next video, we'll fill it in and finish our project. And make sure you watch our Facebook page for that video. And make sure you take pictures and share with us your progress. Have a great week. Wistas.